Good morning, selamat pagi. My name is Ravi. I'm a psychiatrist. I work in Hospital Miri. I've been asked to give this talk by Pustaka, which I have to say thanks to them because they have organized a nice series of health-related talks. So today I'm going to talk about something which is in conjunction of World Suicide Prevention Day, which is I'm going to talk about how we can talk safely about suicide. So, bagaimana kita boleh berbincang tentang bunuh diri. It's something that normally not your usual kind of thing to talk, but something that I felt that young people that in the audience as well as anybody would benefit from knowing. The picture that I have put is something like a ball that is rolling down a pyramid. It's a slippery space to navigate. It's not easy to do it. So we're going to talk about and see how we can go about going about that. Alright. So just a safety reminder, talking about suicide may cause distress even when it's done safely. Just feel free at any time of this presentation to take time out. You can, if the presentation is very overwhelming, you can take the time out to go out, or if you need to talk to a professional, please do so. These are the numbers from Befrienders. Bercakap tentang bunuh diri mungkin menimbulkan emosi yang kurang menyenangkan. Pantau emosi anda dan dapatkan bantuan jika perlu. This talk will be both in Malay and in English. The slides are in English, but I'll switch from time to time lah for the wider audience. Alright. Bunuh diri mengorbankan masyarakat dan komuniti dalam satu sumber yang paling penting lah, the people. It robs people of its most valuable resource. Robs communities of their most valuable resource, which is its people. About 800,000 people die due to suicide every year. It's a big number. It's if you look at statistics, it's about one death in every 40 seconds. It has a complex causation. There's no such thing as a simple cause of suicide. Bunuh diri tak berlaku sebab satu sebab saja. Dia sangat kompleks. Dia bukan cakap, pasal benda ni saja seseorang itu mengalami gejala bunuh diri. No, it doesn't work that way lah. It's and it can be very it can be very difficult for us to. It may be easy for us to say it, but very difficult for us to understand why someone actually takes their life. About 79% of suicides happen in lower and middle income countries like ours. That's a big number also, nearly 80%. You can put that and put it in context, 4 daripada 5 bunuh diri di dunia berlaku di negara-negara yang kita panggil LMIC, low and middle income countries, that includes Malaysia. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a mental illness in order to have suicides. Sekarang we're just coming out of a very big pandemic. We don't know whether we'll go back into it. Financial loss, keberhutangan serius, masalah keluarga. These things can also push a person to take their lives actually. It's also quite common among young people. And they're more affected by how suicides are discussed and portrayed in media. You see a lot of it being portrayed in now what we call as streaming channels, as well as in the media itself, media meaning newspapers and all of that. So let's just see how we can go about what do we do with all these facts and how we can help about that. When we talk about media, kalau kita bincang tentang media dan macam bagaimana bunuh diri dipaparkan ataupun dilaporkan atau dibentangkan dalam media, satu benda yang penting ialah kita kena faham bahawa terdapat satu perhubungan di mana how suicides are portrayed will actually affect suicide rates itself, which is the phenomenon called as contagion. Berarti gejala peniruan. People sometimes when suicides are portrayed in media, when they put in media, like you read a news about suicide, you watch a show that has suicidal depictions, people tend to follow, tend to copy. When does it happen? It doesn't happen all the time. It happens when you talk about the method in detail, how someone took their life. Sangat detail, cara dia, tempat dia bunuh diri. Then you put in one cause. Because of factor X, people have killed themselves. Just one factor. That's something that happens in media. very often. Then you repeat and repeat, especially celebrity suicides. You can see quite a bit of that happen in Western media and as well as East Asian media. Graphic images, how the person died is portrayed very graphically. Macam kalau gambar mangsa tu dipaparkan dalam akhbar and all of that. And the problem is sometimes we give wrong information too, and we sensationalize it. Sometimes suicides gain notorious sensation, and then the one thing that can make people copy is actually putting the idea that suicide is a solution, glorifying the whole concept of suicide. Berarti bunuh diri itu digambarkan sebagai satu penyelesaian masalah. Alright? And there's a lot of research to back all this. And tapi kalau macam tu, kenapa wartawan perlu laporkan? Why do we want our journalists to go and report about it? Because they should, because it's news. Benda tu berita. Berita, the job of journalists is telling what happens in the community to the community. It happens there. It's a duty for them to report. Memang tugas mereka. And while they report, what we can actually learn is, we learn better about suicides when suicides are reported. Why? And also, it can tell people who have the power to change situations. Suicides are very preventable. If we know suicides are happening in the community, kalau kita semakin, if it's reported in the community, that you actually can make targeted steps to prevent it. Example, kalau a journalist reports, okay, there's a suicide in this place, then the policymaker who reads it, the community leader that leads it, they can know, and then they can see, oh, all right, let's do something. And numbers also matter, like the numbers of suicides. Then you get an idea, and then it gets people putting in action to do prevention. And people need to understand why it happens and break down a lot of taboo. Suicide has a lot of stigma. The stigma is quite bad until people don't want to talk about it. If a suicide happens in a community, lebih baik kita tutup cerita and all of that, because kalau dia berlaku contohnya kat Rumah Panjang ke ataupun a small kampung, it's very difficult to talk about it. It's very stigmatizing to the family, it's very stigmatizing to the community. So when we talk about or report about suicide, it has to be done responsibly. Pelaporan ataupun berkomunikasi tentang bunuh diri haruslah dilakukan dengan cara yang selamat dan bertanggungjawab lah, so that you can actually prevent that. Put a link there that you can read about, get some info about. Okay, and this is evidence. When you tell the story with a proper narrative, give the information for people to get help. When you report suicides, you want to prevent more suicides. Bila kita laporkan bunuh diri, we want to prevent any more from happening. And stories, and you also would like to put in, more than people who lost their lives, we would like to put in stories of how people recovered. Cerita di mana ataupun berita di mana you can actually talk about people who recovered, hope and recovery, meaning that how do people actually get away from suicidal crisis, and so that we can actually reduce the myths and improve facts, and provides a platform. Media provides a good platform for us to discuss about suicide prevention, help some people process grief and actually put in more efforts. When we talk about suicides and it keep happening in media, you can get people to call for action. Example, decriminalizing suicides. Okay, I can't seem to pronounce that quite correctly here, but yeah. So it gets people talking. There is a law that that puts people at risk. What can we do about it? All right. So that's what safe reporting does. It gets a good conversation on the way. Okay, in this crowd maybe there are very few journalists, but there are more people that are just you and I, common people. I'm not a journalist, why should I bother? Well, we all have, most of us have a phone, most of us have a social media account. I've been told people use Twitter and Instagram more rather than Facebook. Facebook is for older people like me, but so yeah, I'm more comfortable with it. When I first did this talk last year, I used Facebook as an example, and I did with an audience of 16-year-olds in the Klang Valley. So yeah, I was informed of my age very clearly from the audience. So why do we communicate? People talk about suicides, like let's say there's a suicidal news that you want to share, a person who suicided and you want to share about it, or you want to talk about a message on suicide. Why do people talk about it? To communicate, to talk about, to just send a message, to get connected, perhubungan, to see whether you can get support, or sometimes you want to raise awareness. There is also grief. Just because someone suicided doesn't mean that some person doesn't exist anymore, did not ever exist. You might know somebody who died by suicide. You might have had a memory with that person. How do you want to remember it? That's something that you want to think about. Macam mana kita nak ingat balik ataupun ingat balik, Facebook has that memories and like 10 years ago this. If let's say you lost someone, like in a recent time, and then suddenly your Facebook feed shows about a picture of you guys who are happy. Then how do you want to share it again, or do you not share? These are choices that you have actually. And so that you can prevent and encourage help seeking. Kalau kita nak berkomunikasi tentang bunuh diri, we would like to hope, and also we hope that whatever message we send, it prevents and also encourages help seeking. But the problem with social media is it can get very, very far, very, very quickly. It can get a lot of people involved in the conversation which were not even intended to be. Tiba-tiba satu message tu jadi viral, di-share, di-screenshot, then becomes national news, then suddenly appears in the Star, Says, World of Buzz, but it was just a private message. So that's the problem also with social media. There is quite a very blurred line where privacy is. And then sometimes when you don't communicate it properly, the intended negative outcomes happen, where it somehow put vulnerable people at risk. When we write about something, we have to think about who is reading it. Is it just us? Is it just our friends? Is it just our family members? You see your privacy controls. Sometimes mungkin kita sendiri yang nak baca. There's sometimes there posts only you yourself can see. You just want to put it there as a remembrance. Sometimes there's posts that some of your closer friends only can see. Sometimes there is a post where a lot of people can see. How will each of them react to it? Sometimes they could be having their own struggles. We don't know what people are actually having. And sometimes you can start identifying people who read, sometimes identify with the deceased. The same risk factors, same age group, same working environment, same socio-economic group. Macam, nampak serupa. So when you go through problems, when you communicate it in a way that is very simplified, people might think that, taking my life can be also a solution. So that's why you have to be quite careful when you communicate about this. And social media really brings everyone close together, and the contagion effect of suicide is normally seen by geography, social and psychological proximity. Proximity means how you say is how close you are lah. Like if when social media wasn't popular, when the time when we still read newspapers, this contagion effect happens to happen in the same area, macam kampung yang sama, daerah yang sama. But now we have social media, all that boundaries, those geographical boundaries are brought in very close together, especially when you look at celebrity suicides and all of that. And you bring people closer together. You can be close and you can identify with someone who lives of many thousand kilometers away. You may like the same music, you may like the same this thing, you may follow the same idol, things like that. All right. This works particularly in the younger population, and but saying that, kita perlu ingat, while social media looks dangerous, but social media can also be benefited for a good reason. It is a large platform. It can reach people who cannot be reached otherwise. I've been here for quite a while, so I have actually seen that even if you go to a place where there's no phone line, if they have internet, most people have a social media account. Most people have a Facebook account at least a Twitter account at least, to be connected with your friends or so and so. So it actually offers a space where you can actually connect to people who otherwise cannot be connected. And if someone, and following, and then you offer that opportunity to intervene. You may not even be next to the person, but if you see someone who's at risk, who puts up a status ataupun puts up a tweet that doesn't look so good, you can at least DM them, or you can private message them and talk about it. It offers a place where you can also intervene, and it's and in certain places where you can actually do it anonymously, and it's quite non-judgmental as well. All right. Okay. Then there is, how do you go about doing this? Well, there are many people who have thought of guidelines, but let's think about how one guideline is, the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention. Safety, always think of safety, a positive narrative, and guidelines. Keselamatan, narratif yang positif, dan juga garis panduan. There are certain guidelines, especially for media, there's a lot of guidelines how you can talk about suicide. It's important when you talk about it, you need to know where you're talking about it, who you're talking to, and why you're talking about it. It's very different how I talk to a client in my clinic versus what I communicate in social media. Very different situation. That also can apply to each of us. If you know someone who is suicidal and you're talking to the person in face-to-face, in a private space, you can probably discuss in a lot more detail. You may even, depending on the situation, someone may express a detailed method and you may talk about it. You may talk about, oh, okay, let's not get that. You can do that, but you can't do that in social media because a lot of other people will be able to see it. So that is the simple difference. And so that when you want to put any communication out there, what's my goal? Who is reading it? What do I want to do? The why I'm doing it, who, what to do, what to say, how to reach, and so what. So the whole context of it. So one guideline to talk about how we can do this safely is this Canadian guideline. It's very easy to read. It has nice tables. Always put people in front. The person is the first thing. The language, bahasa dia kena selamat, safe language. Okay, in Malay, it's bunuh diri, and that's only one thing that goes about that lah. There's no 2 or 3 ways to talk about suicide. In some other languages, okay, let's talk about English lah. Let's not talk about languages we're not familiar. But in English, there's this thing that comes out in papers, and there's something that we've been always, you know, even we read books and all, oh, person commits suicide. Let's look at the word commit. Commit is to commit a crime. So when you put the word commit suicide, that is quite a stigmatizing language. Oh, the person died because he did a crime of killing himself. That's actually where that origin comes about. So a better way to talk about it is died by this reason. A person could have died by a heart attack. This person died by suicide. So that's safe language. Images. Even when we tend to, kita nak buat baik, kita nak spread awareness, but then you put an image of someone trying to kill themselves, some dangerous method put in this thing. This is something you see often. That might not be helpful. It can be scary. It might attract attention, but will there people be reading after attracting attention? It doesn't go there, and can also traumatize and trigger a lot of people. Alright? So these are things that we have already discussed about tadi. Dia adalah satu masalah kesihatan awam, and you have to, and it's a safety issue. It is a complex issue. It's not as simple as X causes Y kind of thing. You have to balance how you communicate, and penggunaan statistik. This is something that, you know, that's quite common that comes about in social media, especially those people who want to get good likes and all of that. They take one statistic and they put that one statistic to get the like, you know. Okay, we had a survey in 2017. It's called the National Health and Morbidity Survey for Adolescents, tinjauan kesihatan remaja 2017. In that, it showed lah peningkatan tingkah laku bunuh diri di kalangan remaja 13 to 17, if I'm not mistaken. It shows an increase from 2012. The previous survey was done in 2012. It shows an increase, and then that survey sometimes is made into alarming news lah. News ataupun is shared very alarmingly, you know, with pictures, you know, like, oh, it's like an epidemic, suicide epidemic lah, this and that, you know, very alarming. 1 in 10 people. Before we put such information out there, we need to be careful. We need to do a bit of our own reading. If you look across in the adolescent population, it is worrying. Okay, it is worrying. I'm not saying don't be. I of course say please don't take it lightly. But if we look across the world, adolescent suicidal behavior is actually quite high compared to this thing. So it's not something uniquely in Malaysia as well. right? The situation that is unique in Malaysia is because we have very many different ethnic groups staying together with a lot of common things, the way which makes the situation a little bit different. All right, so how you share statistics also matters. You have to share statistics in a way that is actually useful rather than alarmist. Clear, neutral, people first language. Bahasa yang jelas dan neutral. Do not use stigmatizing language. Avoid detailed description of methods. There's a way to talk about that. There are some of it is actually very hard across languages. I found that it's actually quite easy to write about suicide in BM compared to in English. But even then, you have to be quite careful juga lah how you use that thing. Sharing location, sharing details about people. Okay, you don't share the name, tapi you share the picture of the person's house and the taman. That's very revealing. And how close you want to go? You want to just say Miri, or you want to say Taman XYZ kat Miri? Taman XYZ can actually reveal the identity. It's a very, very small community. People will be able to see that. Photos of deceased as well as family members. Places where they work. Schools. Details that we don't really need to put there, because it can actually expose the identity of the person. If you're putting it in an online group, you really need to read the room lah. Kena tahu what that group is. Apa kumpulan Facebook tu ada ke, ataupun your WhatsApp group or whatever it is. Got to be quite careful about WhatsApp, but things can get forwarded very quickly. It's good that they now prevent, the double forward. You cannot forward more than a few times. Yeah, so at least it prevents the danger. Some people just love to forward things. So yeah, so see how you put the message, and that's also, you have to be quite careful how you forward lah. What you forward from one group may be different to the needs of another group. Tiba-tiba group tu ada 200 lebih orang. From your own family group, which is a very small group, or your own community group, suddenly it's a big group, and you might not even know who's in that group. We have that mistake of talking. You might be telling about someone, and someone is actually in the group. Okay, we're talking about someone who could be at least at risk as well. All right. Be caring and compassionate about your communication. If you want to write about a post, think about it, draft it, look at some guidelines, get someone to read, get some consultation, then post it. Something that is actually worth to be kept as a draft before you post it. Again, neutral, life-affirming, positive visuals. Example of a positive visual is that. All right. And especially if you are putting a suicide news, you would want to put helplines. If you want to put even a news or sharing something, you also want to put a helpline. Now in Malaysia, we're quite lucky. We have a lot of helplines compared to a few years ago. All right. Okay. Now this is, something for. This is a Facebook post, but of course you can quickly adapt it to Twitter. This one is what I added new lah. This is actually sort of an unsafe post lah. You put the picture of the person, then you put a cost, that's just one, and then you make a sort of situation that is like that is actually very sensationalist. Then you do look at it, it's freely available to everyone. So really important to notice that. I've noticed some people are quite careless about their social media posts. They don't know they're actually posting it to public, even their personal stuff. So really be careful who's actually reading it. These things are there. You can't blame Facebook, you can't blame Zuckerberg for this. They've already put in the controls. It's up to you to use it. Alright? Okay. The same thing with Twitter. Okay. The problems with this is, okay lah, this was last year lah, before the care button all was available lah, huh? So what does like mean if you put someone's deceased photo? Sometimes I wonder, they don't put someone passed away because of something. Now we got better controls lah, huh? So what does that even mean? Twitter and Instagram got no choice lah. You only got like or retweet. Don't even know what retweet means for that. You want to share? Or what you want to do? That's why some people put in their account, retweet doesn't mean endorsement. So it's quite confusing how you use these communication tools that you have in social media. Imagine I'm a vulnerable person. Let's say I'm a vulnerable person, and I'm seeing this post. Then I see so many likes. So what do I think? What can I think in my state of mind? In my state of mind, I'm already very stressed. Already start thinking life's not worth living. And then somebody posts something like this, someone who has similar challenges, and then there's so many likes. Yeah, this is something I'm leave the audience to think about lah. Then comment. It's very good if we get posts. Some posts should not have comments lah. But if you want to have comments, you need to be ready to note that sometimes comments can be very unhelpful and negative. Now there are handles, I think I saw the other day, even in Twitter, that you cannot retweet, you cannot put comments and all of that. So that's a good thing. Because people tend to talk and people tend to be very cruel. And sometimes they're just bots. You know lah, Facebook tu 1000 like, tak tahu 1000 tu berapa orang actually wujud. We don't know how many is a cyber whatever it is lah, huh? And really be careful who you set your post to lah, huh? It can become viral. And the other danger is, even if you set it privately, if you set it among some friend of yours who's not really very kind, they can screenshot and share lah. Screenshot is a big problem lah, huh? So it's really about content, context, and as well as the volume that you want to share about it lah, huh? You really need to know that social media is an interactive platform. Dia bukan macam news, you know, news yang not the hard cover news, you know. So akhbar, you tengok akhbar tu, that's it lah. You want to give your own comment, you give it to yourself saja, or you talk about it. You can't write on that post. But when that news is in social media, or that post, or your whatever post, it becomes a 2-3 way, so many way communication. Everywhere, anybody can reach your post if it's in public. It can get really big. So really need to know how you're writing about. So there is one guideline which I think I can encourage people. They say it's for young people, but I think after my personal experience of using this Instagram page, it's really helpful. It can work for anyone. It's very safe. How do you go about messaging? So this is some few excerpts from the Chat Safe guidelines, and it's available as an Instagram page. You can actually Google about it. They have a YouTube page as well. All right. Always remember, when you post about something, be safe. Find whether there's a better way. Feel free to edit. It's okay for you to pull back. It's okay to take down a post. Sangat okay kalau you letak, then you change again. You feel it's not appropriate. You get a feedback from a friend, kawan cakap, this thing is a bit triggering for me lah, huh? Take it out lah. Alright. Privacy, screenshot problem. Okay. Now we all go to, we open, sometimes, okay lah, I'll just admit it lah. I wake up every morning, I'll go through my feed lah. It's one of my first things I do in the morning. People, nowadays we don't wake up, see the sunrise, go exercise. We just see our Facebook feed, Twitter feed. Okay? The things that you don't want to see. You can always hide it. You can always show less of a person. That can be for everything. Can be for news that's like this, news that's not helpful, posts that are very emotionally triggering, some political news, anything. You can hide it. If it is something that is bad, showing self-harm methods, showing news that is very stigmatizing, report. More people report, better the post can get taken down. Can be acted upon lah. Huh? All right. Give information about health. Sometimes it's always good to log off social media when it gets too much. It's okay. The world will not end if you log off your Facebook or Twitter or turn off your notifications. It's also for Instagram, also it goes the same. Also be careful what appears in your Explore and IG. There's a lot of, and you also need to know some of the posts are put there are promoted to promote. Some posts are promoted as well. So you've got to be quite careful about that. If a suicide-related news is promoted in an unsafe manner, that's something that you would really like to convey to the administrators as well. Be very careful of clickbaits. Some people like to put very dangerous headlines to get people to read their news, read their posts, sharing dangerous things like pro-suicide sites. Yang ketiga ni penting. Kalau ada seorang mangsa bunuh diri, you pergi profile dia dan you share benda dari profile dia. That's not right lah, huh? Kalau seorang itu hidup, just think about yourself. Do you like people taking things without your permission? You don't know, taking a thing and putting it out there. I think we really don't know what the person wants, and this person is beyond our reach already. You tak boleh lah cakap dengan dia juga. So you don't know whether he wants that thing to be shared or not. He or she, whether they want to be shared or not. So don't do that, and it attracts dangerous attention as well. Alright? This tends to happen. The moment the name of the person is, everybody will be the spy detective, the good. A lot of people will just go and find his social media, this thing, that, and then you go and you put and share. Not really helpful lah. Huh? Okay, correction, not everybody, some. All right, and even in good intention, sometimes you talk about something that is unpleasant can be dangerous and increasing traffic. Okay, what about our own? Let's say you go through a crisis, you want to share about that. Think about why you are sharing. Are you sharing to raise awareness, or are you sharing to get support? About support, depends on the group that you're sharing. Sometimes there are friends who will be helpful. There are people in your social network that want to help. Ada mungkin kawan, rakan yang nak mungkin tolong ahli keluarga ke. You can reach out. That's okay. But be careful. There's unhelpful comments can come as well. Unhelpful comments can sometimes be very, very hurtful. They can say when you share your crisis, they cakap benda macam you didn't do this, you are not of this, that, and all of that. That can be actually very bad for your health. Keep your own safety plan. Keep a plan, rancangan keselamatan. If you need help, get crisis services. We are in a time where there's everywhere there is a nearby health clinic. We have about 60 odd psychiatry services already in Malaysia spread across. Getting help is not that hard already. Get help if you need to, because sometimes the social media may not be a great platform lah. And it's also quite hard to help someone in social media. You tak tahu where the person is and all of that too sometimes. Okay, who's going to see what's going to happen? The similar questions. How will it affect others? Sometimes when we share our own struggles, sometimes some people you might actually cause harm for someone else who's also in a similar or worse situation. So think carefully before you share. And also the reactions can be any direction. Sometimes it's very good to put a trigger warning. Bagus kalau you rata this is a suicidal post, berita ni mungkin kurang menyenangkan. So someone who doesn't want to see that can quickly skip the post and go. Okay. If you want to talk about someone else, if you don't do it in real life, don't do it online lah. Kalau kita you tak akan buat benda tu in your day to day, don't do it online. Always ask permission about if you want to share someone else's story. Let's say someone has passed. Remember the person has their suicide survivors. About 135 people or so are affected by suicide after the death of one person. So that's how many people who can be affected. That's in high income countries. We don't know about low income countries, low and middle income countries. Only give accurate info. Celebrity suicides are very difficult. Do not speculate cause. It's very difficult to contain celebrity suicide news. You have to be quite careful about that lah. In fact, just want to share that when there was when they have studied when there were celebrity suicides, there have actually been spikes of copycat suicides because of the rate these news have actually been shared. Okay. Let's say you are reading a social news feed, then you see someone who says that I don't want to live anymore. There's no point. How are you going to respond? Take things seriously. People don't simply put things up there for fun. Even if they do, there's no way that you are going to be able to tell. You mungkin tak tahu what the person has actually meant, what the person's thinking and what the person has typed. We don't know how serious it is. But when you want to handle, ataupun bila kita nak approach atau kita nak beri satu pendekatannya, you kena tahu that kita ada batasan. We have limits. You cannot do beyond a certain level of interventions you can do. And if you yourself are not in a good state to help, don't help. Take care of yourself first. Get someone else to help. Then because sometimes you pergi tolong, then you sendiri akan dapat kesan samping, like you be very affected by that. You yang terkesan dengan cuba menolong tu. Ask in private. Please don't write under the comment or put it publicly, unless there's no other way. Some people do not have their private messages open and all. Be safe. Sometimes when you have your own post, some comments are very triggering. You can actually remove it, if it's your own, or you can report those comments. Get help if needed and report unsafe posts. When you talk to someone, ask them what's happening. Can we talk about your post? Get permission. Tanyalah what's happening. Apa jadi? Then bro, why you post like this? Talk a bit about it. Then you say like, okay, then if the person says I'm going through this, listen before offering advice, before giving information. You can always give people information where to get help. Or if let's say you are not equipped to handle the conversation, you can maybe provide contact numbers of helplines where they can talk to. But I may not be good at talking about this, so maybe you can talk about this to someone else. Alright? If people is refusing for help, they are very distinct, it's okay. Come and talk to them again later. If you know someone who can help them, try to contact them lah. Suicidal crisis is something that you may, if you feel and if your instinct tells that that person's at risk and really dangerous risk and can do something to hurt themselves, and the person is refusing help, if you know someone within their close vicinity, try to contact, try to help. It's a very dicey situation. It's just like that ball on that pyramid. Nanti you tolong, then you breach the confidentiality, then nanti hilang kawan pula. But if you don't help, if something happens to your friend, how? It's something that you got to think about and work on. Okay, so that's a bit about this talk. It's always about content, kandungan, context, and volume, how much you talk about it. Alright, so before we close, I'm going to share a small video from the International Association of Suicide Prevention, what they have thought about suicide prevention this year. Let's hope we get sound as well.
What's in a smile? A simple smile can mean little to you or I, but to someone thinking about suicide, it can be the first step towards life. Suicidal thoughts are complex. No one knows exactly what works to stop another tragedy, adding to the 800,000 suicides and 20 million attempted suicides a year. We do know, though, that certain actions can make a difference. And we know that if we put a wide range of these actions in place, we have a better chance of preventing suicides. Community support to counter the isolation so often felt. Responsible and sensitive media portrayals to help people see how others have managed. Local education to create awareness in the community. Restricting the means of suicide to stop people at critical moments. All these actions have been shown through research to work. But we can't do all this alone. We need people on the ground to help us make the first step towards those with suicidal thoughts. By stepping closer, we can be aware of those around us who need help. By stepping closer, we can encourage those with suicidal thoughts to reach out. By stepping closer, we can support those in need by sitting in their pain. Every step closer can connect someone to life and the help they want. Sometimes those steps are big. Sometimes all it takes is a smile.
All right, that's about it. 10 September is World Suicide Prevention Day. We have a program in the KKM website which you can check out. It's about wearing the yellow challenge actually. So thank you so much, and I thank everyone for attending today. All right, thank you.